Today's lesson is Plus Talk, acing an interview. Hi, everybody. My name is Roger.
And I'm Mike.
And today we're going to continue talking about a job interview that is taking place between David and Jess. And remember, last time we had part 1 and part 2 of our lesson. In part 1, David and Jess were building rapport so they could relate to each other and they could have a very smooth interview with each other, especially for Jess, who wants to intern at this company. And then in the second part, of course, the interview continued in the conference room, and it was all about providing thoughtful answers, which is what you want to do during a job interview.
Absolutely. And she provided some really good, thoughtful answers. After building a nice rapport with the interviewer, she then sat down, gave some good answers to the questions he asked. And I think so far, things are going pretty well for Jess. But this interview has only just begun, and we're going to be looking at a few other stages in the interview process, giving you some tips and seeing how Jess handles things. So let's get to part 3 of our interview dialogues, showing initiative.
3. Showing initiative. During the second stage of the interview, Jess has the opportunity to ask her own questions. I'd like to ask about the onboarding process. How much training will be provided? And how soon do your interns begin working as a part of the team?
Good question. Our onboarding process takes around 2 weeks from start to finish, but you'll gradually be given more and more responsibilities during that time. Once you've shown that you're familiar with our products and operations, you'll be assigned to your department and given your primary duties.
And how will I receive feedback on my performance during my time here?
Our interns have weekly performance reviews with their department head. In your case, it'll be the marketing director. So you'll receive plenty of feedback while you're here.
大家好，第一部分我们看到名词 initiative， 意思是积极性，或是积极的行动，或是主动权。像是 The new intern shows good initiative, so she might want to apply for a full-time position. 那位新的实习生表现出良好的积极性，所以他可能想申请全职职位。或是 When employees take the initiative to get the job done, they are noticed. 当员工积极主动地把工作完成时，他们会被注意到。另外补充一个同义名词 ambition, A-M-B-I-T-I-O-N, ambition, 指野心或是抱负。举例来说 Terrence's ambition to become a pilot was thwarted by his poor eyesight. Terrence 想成为飞行员的目标被他糟糕的视力所阻挠。或者 His friends could tell that Jack was a man of great ambition. 他的朋友看得出来 Jack 是一个胸怀抱负的人。接下来我们看到单字 assign， 这个字是动词，指分派、指派或是分配。例如 The teacher didn't assign us any homework for the weekend. 老师没有指派我们任何周末作业。或是 After Tony was promoted, he assigned his best friend to be his assistant. Tony 升迁后，指定他最好的朋友当他的助理。另外补充 assign 的名词 assignment, A-S-S-I-G-N-M-E-N-T, assignment, 指作业、功课或是任务。我们可以说 Sylvia will fail the course if she doesn't finish her assignment by tomorrow noon. Sylvia 如果不在明天中午前完成作业，就会被当掉。或是 Doug usually has at least 1 week between assignments at work. Doug 通常每份工作任务间隔至少有1个星期。
Okay, so in part 3, of course, we're showing initiative, and initiative means that you basically provide the incentive for doing something. You do something without somebody else telling you what to do. So, of course, you want to show that to your interviewer that you do have initiative, that you're not passive, waiting for instructions. They do want people to think for themselves and to come up with new ideas because that makes the company more successful. So, in part 3 here, again, we're showing initiative. And during the second stage of the interview, Jess has the opportunity to ask her own questions. Okay, so of course, mostly in an interview, it's the interviewer asking the interviewee questions. But of course, if you're a professional company, you want to allow the interviewee to ask questions themselves.
Absolutely. This is, of course, encouraging the interviewee, the person who's trying to get the job, to think about the company, to show that they've researched the company, to show that they can think independently and creative. They're not just going to be some robot who has to be told what to do at all stages of their job. They can actually do stuff on their own. They have or can show initiative. So Jess has a question and she kind of wants to know. It's a very good practical question, but it also shows that she's thought about some things and sort of, seen a few questions or problems that she might see in the future or have coming down the road at her. So she asks, I'd like to ask about the onboarding process. This is basically the hiring process, the training process, both getting the job and what would, the first few weeks of me working here be like? Will I just be thrown into the job? Will someone be taking me around kind of as a leader, as a mentor? How does this work? So she asks, how much training will be provided? Will I be trained for a day, for a week, for months, that kind of thing? And how soon do your interns begin working as a part of the team? She's showing her enthusiasm and also kind of showing a little bit there that she doesn't want to be treated just as a trainee, as someone who's completely inexperienced, completely new to the job. She kind of is interested in getting some good training, but then also getting to the work. She wants to be just part of the job, part of the work team.
And David says, well, that's a good question. Our onboarding process takes around 2 weeks from start to finish, but you'll gradually be given more and more responsibilities during that time. So here David is providing a very specific answer. Yes, our onboarding process will take around 2 weeks from the beginning to the end. Okay, so yes, you'll have 2 weeks of training, of orientation to the company, but gradually, slowly, you'll be given more and more responsibilities during that time. So, of course, during the onboarding process, you will receive training, but also during the onboarding process, you'll be given some job tasks and responsibilities, little by little, and you'll slowly make the transformation to being a regular employee who no longer needs training.
There you go. Once you've shown that you're familiar with our products and operations, you'll be assigned to your department and given your primary duties. So, yeah, about 2 weeks of basic training, that's when she'll probably always be working with another staff member, just learning how the job works and her responsibilities, her specific tasks. And then once she's shown that she's familiar, once they kind of see that, okay, she's learned all this stuff, we can let her work on her own without her causing all sorts of problems. So when she's familiar with the products and operations, you'll be assigned to your apartment and given your primary duties. Then you will basically be working as part of a team. You'll be working as any other staff member in the office. And one of those things that will happen to you is you'll be assigned to a department and given some main duties. These are the most important things. That's things that she'll spend most of her time on. When we assign someone, it's basically someone in a superior supervisor position saying, okay, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. So if the teacher in the classroom says, okay, you clean up there and you clean the windows and you take out the garbage, they're assigning you to different jobs. And of course, this happens in a large organization. People have specific jobs, and when someone tells you what your job is, they are assigning you that job. If you buy an airplane ticket, there'll be a number and a seat number on it. That is assigning you your seat. So that's the one that has been given to you by someone who's in charge.
Right. So in this particular case, she will be assigned to her department. Of course, she will be given assignments, for example, or jobs to do. This reminds me, a long time ago, there used to be school kids who would stop me in the street and ask me questions in English because they had a school assignment, which they had to actually find foreigners in the street and ask them questions in English. I haven't really been asked those questions in quite some time, but in any case, that's an example of a school assignment. And she'll be given some job assignments, or she'll be assigned to a particular department, and then she'll be given her primary duties and her primary responsibilities, and she'll be assigned to certain clients and stuff like that. And Jess got another question. She asks another question. And how will I receive feedback on my performance during my time here? So indeed, of course, when you're working at a company, you want to know if you're doing well, if you're doing things right. So, of course, you need feedback. And remember, feedback is a non-count noun, so you are forbidden to add an S to this word. You can't do it. It's not allowed. If you do, you will suffer. So indeed, she will receive feedback on her performance. At least she wants some feedback. She wants someone to tell her if she's doing well or not.
Yeah. Basically, let me know. What did you think? How did I do? What do you think of that? What's your opinion? And then David adds, then he answers her question by saying, our interns have weekly performance reviews with their department heads. So she'll get feedback weekly or once a week from her, basically her boss, the person who is the head of the department she was assigned to. He says, in your case, it'll be the marketing director. So she'll probably be assigned to the marketing department. The marketing director, her boss, will give her a feedback weekly in these performance reviews. And then David goes on to say, so you'll receive plenty of feedback while you're here. Yeah, I guess if she's there for her summer holiday, that might be 2 or 3 months. That might be 10 or 12 weeks. So she'll get a performance review, get this feedback probably around 10 or 12 times while she's working there.
Indeed. So she's asked very good questions here, and I'm sure she has other questions to ask as well. But we don't have time to cover all those questions. Now let's move on to part 4, where they are wrapping up the interview, and we are going to wrap up our lesson with part 4.
4. Wrapping up the interview. After Jess has finished asking questions, the interview draws to a close.
And I think that's everything. Thank you very much for your time today. It really was very nice to meet you.
Likewise. I'd just like to say one more time how excited I am about the prospect of joining your company as an intern. I really think this is a great fit.
I do too. We have a few more candidates to interview before we make our decision, but we'll get back to you as soon as we have finished with the interviews. If we decide to move forward with you, you'll be asked to come back into the office to go through the contract.
Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to hearing from you.
第二部分我们看到名词 prospect 指发生的可能性或是预期、展望，也可以是前景。例如 The weather forecast says the prospect of rain is high this weekend. 天气预报说周末下雨的可能性很高。另外，在 prospect 的字尾加上 IVE 就变成了形容词 prospective 指将来的或是可能的。我们可以说Prospective students of a university have many factors to consider before applying. 准大学生在申请大学前有很多因素要考量。也可以说 Bella has narrowed down the list of prospective office managers to just 4 people. Bella 把可能的办公室经理名单缩减到只剩4个人。最后我们看到单字 candidate， 这个字是名词，指求职者、候选人或是应试者。像是 Mr. Brown has interviewed 5 candidates for the sales head position. Brown 先生面试了5位应征销售主管职位的求职者。或是 All the job candidates seem to be well qualified. 所有的应征者似乎都相当胜任。
Okay, so again, we're wrapping up the interview, and we're not taking the interview and putting gift wrap paper on it to give to somebody as a present. You can do that with a present. You can wrap it up. But in this particular case, to wrap up something means to finish it, to stop dealing with it. So let's wrap up today's lesson, or let's wrap up the interview. Let's finish the interview.
All right, and it seems that the interview is wrapping up. It says after Jess has finished asking questions, the interview draws to a close. Well, when things draw to a close, they wrap up. These are just ways of saying they end. They're over, in other words. So the interview draws to a close. It's basically the end of the interview. David's asked all his questions. Jess seems happy with what she did and with the answers she got to her questions. So it's time to go home, basically, or for David to go back to his other duties. David says, and I think that's everything. So he kind of looks at his list. He's written down all the answers he needed. He's gotten all the information he wanted. So that's everything. Thank you very much for your time today. It really was very nice to meet you. So he's just basically saying, thanks for coming in. Thanks for answering the questions. Nice to meet you. And of course, he's not quite ready to make a decision, but Jess is giving this one more opportunity to kind of express her excitement and her enthusiasm about this whole process. As David said, it was nice to meet you. And Jess, in the beginning of her response, she says, likewise. Now, this is a word we can often use to just basically say, I feel the same way too, or I do too. It's a really common answer to when someone expresses an opinion about something. I went to that new restaurant. I loved it. Oh, likewise. I visited for lunch with my friends last week. So basically saying, I think the same thing too. I feel the same way too.
She could also say the feeling is mutual. I feel the same way. Or she could also say, yes, it was nice to meet you too. So she goes on to say, I'd just like to say one more time how excited I am about the prospect of joining your company as an intern. So I believe she is being sincere here. She likes this company. She's heard a lot of good things about it, and she'd really like the opportunity to work there. So she wants to emphasize this. Yeah, let me say one more time how excited I am about the possibility or the prospect of joining your company as an intern. So here we've got the word prospect, which basically means the possibility that something will happen in the future. You might have the prospect of getting back together with your ex-boyfriend, for example. Maybe he's had a change of heart and you can get back together again. There's a prospect of getting back together.
All right, so the idea, the possibility of working for this company is really exciting to Jess. She's really enthusiastic about it. She says, I think this is a great fit. No, she's not talking about a new pair of shoes. She's talking about the job. The job being a fit, meaning I'll be happy in this job. I'll have all the skills for this job. I think I can do the job well, and I'd really like to be given a chance to show you that, basically. I think the job would be a good fit. I think the job would suit me very, very well. And David seems to agree. He thinks the interview went well. He was obviously impressed with Jess as a person and as a candidate for this internship. So he says, I do too. And then he says, we have a few more candidates to interview before we make our decision, but we'll get back to you as soon as we have finished with the interviews. So the interview process for the company will go on a little bit longer. They have a few more candidates to interview. A candidate is basically a person who is applying for or trying to get some kind of choice or chance or opportunity or something like that. In an election, of course, many people want to become the president or a local councillor in the Li-Fa-Yuan or something, legislator, but you can't all have the job. But anyone who's interested in the job will put their name forward formally, say, I'd like that job. Those people are all candidates for the job, but of course, in the end, only one person will win the job. But anyone who's interested, anyone who's applying, anyone who's trying to get the job will be a candidate. So there's a few more people to interview, basically. And then, of course, David says, we'll talk to you after that.
Right, and something to keep in mind is that even though this interview is for a specific position, in the future they may have other openings for similar positions. So it's important to do well at the interview, not just for the position at hand, but for a possible position in the future. You might get a phone call later on that says that, hey, we've got another position open. Would you like to interview for that? So indeed, keep that in mind, and you might be a candidate for another job position. But in this particular case, though, they need to interview other candidates, and they will get back to her. They will talk to her again in the future by phone call or by text message or whatever, and they'll let her know if they selected her or not. Hopefully, of course, if they selected somebody else, they'll still contact her and say, we're sorry, you did well in the interview, but we decided to hire somebody else. We thank you for your effort and your time. That is the polite thing to do if you have turned someone down for the position. David goes on to say, if we decide to move forward with you, in other words, if we decide to hire you, you'll be asked to come back into the office to go through the contract. So at that point, you will have passed the interview, but then we'll need to discuss the contract with you, and we'll make sure that you understand it before you sign it.
And this all sounds good to Jess, so she wraps things up by saying, thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. Just one more chance to just get in that idea there that I'm really excited about this. I think it'll be a good fit. I'm hoping to hear good things from you. Please don't keep this news to yourself. If you make a decision to hire me, please get in touch very soon because I'm really looking forward to it.
Indeed. So she's being very polite, very professional here, and I must say that David conducted himself very professionally as well. It does indeed sound like a good fit. I'm confident she will be hired by this company. Okay, that brings us to the end of our discussion for today. It's time now to listen to our Chinese teacher, Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第二部分对话标题是 Wrapping up the interview， 结束面试。那这边它用到片语动词 wrap up， 本来是指将什么来包裹起来，也可以引申表达结束、总结或是完成的意思。像如果你听到 Let's wrap this meeting up， 就是我们来结束这场会议吧。另外呢，有一个用法是 be wrapped up in something， 看起来好像是被包在某件事情里面。那它可以用来描述某个人专心致力于某事，对某事有极大的兴趣。举例来说 My sister was completely wrapped up in her work, so she didn't hear me come in. 我姐姐她完全专注在工作上，所以没有听到我进来。好，那么在面试差不多要结束的时候呢，对话里面的 Jess 对 David 说，我只想再说一次，我对于可能加入贵公司担任实习生感到非常的兴奋。好，这时候他用到 prospect 来表达这个发生的可能性。那这个字也有预期啊、展望前景的意思。我们这边就来补充它的字首字根。好 ，spect 这个字根它有看见或是查看的意思。在 prospect 这个字当中，它的字首 pro 表示向前， spect 表示看。我们向前看，看向远方时会看到景色，所以 prospect 可以指具体的景象景色，尤其是指从高处所看到的景色。那它也可以表达那种抽象的含义，去指前景、展望等等的意思。好，那这边要补充几个有相同字根的单字。第一个是 inspect， 它的字首 in 表示往内， spect 表示看，合在一起往内看，我们往里面仔细的看，应该可以联想到 inspect， 它有检视、检验或是审查的意思。这通常是指说为了找出是否有错误或是问题而仔细检查。那么第二个补充的是 expect， 这个字大家应该蛮熟悉的，那它是由字首 ex 搭配 spect 这个字根组合而成，只是因为这个 ex 它的尾音 x 和我们字根 spect 它的 s 发音产生的同化现象，所以我们才会看到 spect 只剩下 pect 的部分了。那么字首 ex 它是表达向外，字根 spect 表示看，那我们就可以用向外看，期待着某人或某事物的到来，用这样的方式去联想到 expect， 它有期待、期望或是预期的意思了。好，那么以上是今天重点整理，我们来回顾今天的单字吧。
Initiative. Jane's manager was disappointed by her lack of initiative. Assign. Richard was assigned to the company's office in Berlin. Feedback.The other students will provide feedback after your presentation. Likewise. You're welcome to stay with us whenever you're in town. Likewise. Prospect. Nicola was frightened by the prospect of losing her job. Candidate. We have received applications from a number of qualified candidates.
Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Mike.
I am Roger. See you next time.